Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian Y and this is Foundations of Economics. In this video I'm going to introduce the quantity theory of money. In the previous sets of videos we've talked about lots of different concepts in macroeconomics. We talked about the price level as measured by GDP deflator and the CPI, and then later on we talked about the role of money in an economy and what determines the money supply. In this chapter we're going to bring them all together in the quantity theory of money. To get a little bit of notation out of the way first, we're going to use capital P to denote the price level in an economy. This could be measured by either the GDP deflator or the CPI. P tells us the overall price of goods and services in terms of money in an economy. If we invert that to 1 over P, we can think of this as the value of money. The higher the price level, the lower the value of money. If P is the price of a basket of goods in terms of dollars, 1 over P is the value of money in terms of goods. As with so many other things, the value of money is determined by supply and demand. I'm going to illustrate this with a graph. On the horizontal axis, we're going to have the quantity of money, that's M. And over here on the vertical axis, we will have the value of money, which is 1 over P. But I'm also going to draw a second vertical axis on the right, and that's going to be for our price level. Since 1 over P and P are inversely related, as the value of money goes up, the price level is going to go down. And so the P axis on the right is actually going to be inverted. Higher price levels are at the bottom of the graph, lower price levels are at the top of the graph. The quantity of money demanded goes up when the price level goes up and when the value of money goes down. The reason for this is when the price level is high and the value of money is low, people need more money to buy the goods they need. On the other hand, when the price level is low and the value of money is high, people don't need as much money to buy what they need, and so the quantity of money demanded is lower. Putting this on the graph, we have a downward sloping money demand curve that looks something like this. Money supply, on the other hand, is determined by the central bank in a country. In the United States, that's the Federal Reserve. Government policy determines the money supply. It does not depend on consumers reacting to the price level. Therefore, the money supply is just whatever the Fed decides it is, and that makes the money supply curve a vertical line. Wherever the money supply crosses our money demand curve will give us our equilibrium value of money on the left and price level on the right. We can use this simple model to see what happens when the Federal Reserve decides to change the money supply. Suppose they use open market operations to inject more money into the economy. They would do this by buying up bonds from the people. This is going to shift our money supply to the right. We can then draw in our new money supply, the shift to the right being the amount of money that was added to the economy. And now we can see what our new equilibrium value of money and price level are going to be. We can see here that as the money supply increases, the price level also increases. It goes down on the graph, but remember that down is up for the price level. The equilibrium value of money goes down. And this shows us that as money is added into the economy, we have inflation. That is the price level going up. This is the basic idea behind the quantity theory of money. As we move forward, we are going to distinguish between nominal variables and real variables. Nominal variables are measured in monetary units, such as dollars. Real variables are measured in terms of physical units. We could talk about the nominal price of a good, as in its dollar price, but we could also talk about the real price of a good in terms of another good. Money neutrality is a fundamental idea in classical macroeconomics. Money neutrality states that real variables are unaffected by changes in the money supply and the price level. An example of a real variable in the economy is total output, which we denote with a Y as we've been doing in the past. Y is also known as our real GDP, the total output in an economy. Previously, we used the production function to see what goes into determining Y. Those were things like the technology level, the labor supply, the capital stock, None of these things had anything to do with the money supply or the price level. We can combine our real GDP with the price level and take P times Y, and that will be our nominal GDP. That is our total GDP measured in dollars rather than units. Let's talk about how both of these measures of GDP are related to the money supply. We will use V to denote the velocity of money. The velocity of money is the rate in which money changes hands in an economy. We define the velocity of money as the nominal GDP, that's P times Y, divided by M. Remember that P times Y is the total amount of expenditure in an economy measured in terms of money. M is the total amount of available money. So the number of times that a typical dollar changes hands in a year is the nominal GDP divided by the total amount of money. We can also rearrange this by multiplying both sides by M to get M times V equals P times Y. This is what we call the quantity equation. Thinking about this again, on the right we have P times Y, total expenditure. On the left we have the total amount of money times the amount of times it changes hands, and these had better be equal. We can also use this equation to think about what happens when the money supply increases. When the money supply increases, this equation needs to balance. That could happen with one of three things happening. V could go down, P could go up, or Y could go up. Let's think about Y changing first. Remember that Y is the real GDP. Assuming that money neutrality holds, Y is determined only by the factors of production and is unaffected by the money supply, so Y doesn't change. The quantity theory of money also assumes that the velocity of money stays roughly constant, or at least changes very slowly. That leaves us with P. When M goes up, P must also go up to balance the equation. This lines up exactly with what we saw on the money supply and money demand graph. When the money supply increases, the price level also increases, and that's where inflation comes from. The last thing I want to talk about is some of the effects of inflation. The government of a country typically pays for its expenditure using taxes. Let's think about what would happen, though, if a government were to instead pay for its expenditures by printing money. They can certainly do that, but it's not without cost. When the government prints more money, the money supply increases, therefore increasing the price level and decreasing the value of money. Anyone holding money in the country now has less purchasing power than before because all their money is worth less. This effectively puts a tax on people who hold money. Governments printing too much money can lead to hyperinflation. This is basically a period of extremely high inflation. Germany in the 1920s was an example of this, where the German mark became almost worthless. Money was worth so little in Germany during the 20s that children made kites out of money. Another recent example of inflation was Zimbabwe in the 2000s. At one point, the inflation rate in Zimbabwe exceeded 10,000%. There's evidence of hyperinflation that goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. In the 3rd century, the Roman Empire experienced a huge economic crisis that was precipitated by the emperors minting new coins as opposed to printing money, but that also caused hyperinflation. Money neutrality suggests that inflation should generally not cause problems because everything balances out when the price of everything increases. Wages should keep pace with inflation, meaning that purchasing power should stay the same, ceteris paribus. Economists generally agree that this is true in the long run. There are costs to inflation, and I'm going to refer you to the textbook for an excellent treatment of those. That's all for now. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.